Gold is the only money that you can have, and nobody has to give you anything to have it.
Good.
Yeah, all other money is dependent on somebody giving you something, okay? Whether they give you, and so it's unique in that its confiscation risk is less than others. So that's why one of the reasons gold is unique. But it is also, back to your main point, it is a widely recognized storehold of wealth that I could bring around the world and I could use it. And it's particularly important in that it is not deflated. You can't deflate its value, but you can't print it. You create more of it. And then it also, in order to hold its...
I have a personal question here. I hold a lot of gold. I, for a long time, have kept 10% of my asset base in gold. The thing I wonder with gold is, while it can't be replicated today, I mean, there are people who are talking about it as a byproduct of fusion and how they will create it like they did lab-grown diamonds. I don't want to extrapolate that far. But with gold, isn't it based on faith? Isn't it a bit like religion? Because gold inherently, I get that it's a great place to store value, but does gold have enough utility in isolation?
Money doesn't have much utility, generally speaking, right? If you're carrying around cash,
it's paper.
It's paper. It doesn't have much utility. So I don't think it's utility. I think you got to get out of the utility perspective of gold. Everything that's money could be a risk. Does it stay money? So, for example, in the history of gold, when there were great discoveries of gold, then the value of gold is affected by the quantity of those discoveries. And if they could replicate gold, or like they've been replicating diamonds, then that becomes a risk of gold. So there are all risks to all monies, and that are of a similar nature in terms of replicating the supply of them, or also the acceptance of them as a money. There became gold fell out of fashion as a money, and bonds fell into fashion. But the historic thing to know is that throughout history, there is always the temptation. When there's a fiat money, which easily can be produced, and then there's the temptation of the interest rate. Okay, gold doesn't have an interest rate. Okay, no interest rate.
In India, it does.
Gold has an interest rate.
So India doesn't produce very much gold of our own. We end up importing a lot of the gold. So to be fiscally prudent, the government has this plan where if you buy sovereign gold bonds from the government, digital
gold bonds,
you get
that
interest.
Ain't gold.
But you're also able to monetize physical gold because you can lend it out for a certain percentage.
But you're still dealing with credit risk. Okay. So what you're getting paid for is credit risk, right? So it's not gold. It's a promise to get your gold back, right? Then that's what money was. And that's why it would have an interest rate. You have an interest rate that on the promise to get your gold back. That's what everybody believed, and that's the great trick through history. The great trick of history, and everybody believed it back then for a long time, is if I hold the promise to get the gold, then I will get an interest rate. And I could always turn my money in for gold. So why won't I hold the promise to get the gold and get an interest rate on it rather than to hold the actual gold, which wouldn't give me an interest rate? And that was the trap. And that is always the trap. So when you look at it today, let's say, and you think, okay, I think it's just arbitrage. Let's say I can hold gold that gives me no interest rate. I could hold Swiss francs, which don't give me much interest rate. I can hold US dollars, which will give me, depending on the maturity, but let's say will give me a 4% interest rate. My basic question is, if gold goes up by more than 4%, gold has to go up by more than 4%, then I'm better holding gold. And if it goes up by less than 4%, then I'm better holding the bond that'll operate. So I keep thinking about that question, and the world keeps thinking about that question. Look, I should say the following: there are two important ways to invest. Okay, the first is, what if you can't beat the market? Most people can't beat the market. So when they start off, everything isn't a bet. It's like, if I don't know what to bet on, what is my portfolio? And so you should start with, what is that mix of assets if you're not a trader, and so on. What is the right mix? And that's, for example, why a lot of Indians hold gold, or a lot of people hold gold. They don't want to bet, but they just saying that'll be a storehold of wealth. Once you have that portfolio should be a well-diversified portfolio that assumes you can't market time. Then there's the question, can you market time? Okay?
Right.
So you're asking me a market timing question. I want to distinguish it. I don't think most people should play a market timing question. And when you're asking me my market timing, I view that question with a lot of responsibility, because maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong. I wanted to preface answering your question with that explanation, and then I'll go back to answering your question. Money is debt, and debt is money. What I mean, money, so here's mechanics. You're holding a debt instrument. What you're holding is a promise to deliver some money. And what that money's worth will determine what the value of what you're holding is, okay? You're holding, when I hold that debt, you're holding money that if it's devalued, you're going to be sorry, okay? And money is debt. And what I mean by that, when you're holding your money, you're holding it in a debt instrument. So money is debt and debt is money. And so now when I'm answering your question, to me, there's too much debt and we're producing it too much. And so when I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at around the world, and I'm not just looking at it in the United States, I'm looking at it in the UK and in France and in China and in most countries, we're producing too much debt. That means I don't want that kind of money. So because I don't want that kind of money, I look at, well, that's why I prefer and have been preferring the holding of gold to that kind of money. I think when you think about your portfolio, you should start to think, again, if you don't have any, what should you be holding? I think individuals, or if you look at the quality of money, and like gold, let's call it, I would say I want to stay out of fiat currencies, and I want to stay out of those things on a tactical bet, not on the strategic asset allocation bet. When I do that, I think to myself, okay, what should I have? And an individual, and most investors, should have between 5 and 15% of their portfolio in a gold or an alternative money. Now, it depends what other assets they have in the portfolio.
Even if they're starting today to build a portfolio after the gold appreciation of the last year?
I think that they have to stop even thinking about the appreciation and market timing as a starting point. You have to say, what amount am I going to hold? Okay, what is that right amount? And it'll be so the answer to the question is yes. Forget about, and we can get into the pricing of gold and what it might do and what it might not do, but still, okay, I need to hold that amount, because that amount is the right amount. If you were to go through a portfolio optimization and you were to say, through a mechanical portfolio optimization, and you say, what is my mix of assets to create the right portfolio? If you're holding stocks and you're holding other assets, because gold is, over a period of time, a low returning asset class like cash. It has produced, and for logical reasons, it produces about a 1.2% a year real return. That's a low real return, but it is highly diversified, because when the other parts of the portfolio do very badly, let's say, because of certain things like we're talking about stagflation, you print money and all debt issues, then the gold does very well. So it also has a diversification benefit in terms of the portfolio. For those reasons, it is the most fundamental money that we know of. And it is at the same time an effective diversifier to other things. That'll get you to that between 5 and 15% of the portfolio.